Hi friends, I'm Anton and you're on the Blackroom channel. So, those 18 months of construction are finally over and we finished a brand new next level cinema hall and showroom for the Blackroom company. Blackroom 2.0. And in this episode, I'm going to show you exactly how it turned out. Let's dive in. I can't even believe it, friends, that this room is finally ready. Seriously, 18 months, even more. It's actually been that long since we first started designing this room, when we first took over this space. Originally, it was 47 square meters, a finished cinema hall that's already tuned and just delivers a flood of emotions. And literally, a week after we're filming this video today, we'll be holding our first open house. And very soon, our official opening will also take place, along with our partners from the Alliance. Rublevka Room, where we have a whole entertainment center here. A place where we can demonstrate just how differently you can organize a leisure space in your own private home. Well, we're going to talk about and show the uniqueness of this showroom in this very video. But first, let's go back in time a bit, because it's great when everything's ready, planned, and controlled. But just a few months ago, at two different stages of finishing this room, the final touch-ups and acoustic design, I made a special report for you, directly from the site, so to speak, so you could see how it actually happened and how many cool, interesting details were really put in at those stages. Now for some movie magic. Friends, today is one of the final days of installing all the equipment that's going in. We're doing this little insert now just to immerse you in the process. These are the most, exciting, as they say, 2 weeks before the cinema hall is fully functional. The guys are continuing and finishing up. Today we're connecting all the acoustics, wiring, and terminating the speakers because all the speakers in the hall are already installed. Let's head in there now. The rack is almost ready. All the main equipment's here. Today we'll be powering it up and doing some initial checks and measurements, including acoustic ones in the cinema hall itself. The projector shelf is up. Everything here is ready. The window, the door with the portal, it's all covered up. It doesn't look very nice or interesting now, but later you'll see how it will all look without the protection. I mean, it's finished, just protected so it doesn't get damaged. Let's head into the hall, because the air conditioners are also up and running, commissioned, and basically everything's ready. The acoustic door's in place. Let's go right in. You can see the state the hall is in right now. The screen wall is ready for the screen installation, for the assembly and installation, but that'll be done at the very last minute, once everything's been cleared out. Except for the furniture. The carpeting's already down, so the floor is completely finished, and it's protected from dirt and dust. We have a very erotic portal here. It's in velvet. I mean, all of this, all these walls, very beautiful. There will be a second door here later, but for now we're starting the hall without it. And take a look at the projection window. It's also pitch black velvet, and it looks very beautiful. That's where the projector, or two, will shine from. As I said, all the acoustics are installed. Here you see, for example, the rear surround channel is angled. There's another one just like it over there. Those are our rear surrounds. And, well, all the rest of the acoustics are also just protected for now so that, God forbid, they don't get damaged during the further installation and wiring of the LED lighting. The LED lighting's in its final stage now. Andre's basically gathering all the LED strips together, and Akmal's busy assembling the panel. We took the panel and, as I said, painted it black so that everything is in a single uniform style. Everything's being assembled right here and will be mounted on the wall once it's ready. By the end of the week, the panel will be in place and power will be supplied according to the final scheme. Everything is temporary for now. What's next? The screen wall, yes, as I said, it's all ready. The subwoofers, everything, all the acoustics are in their places. Here you see a series of damping materials that the acoustics will be clamped into so they won't move and will deliver all their energy into the hall. The subwoofers aren't finished yet either. Today we're waiting for special weights that we'll place right here on top. And our subwoofers will also be as acoustically inert as possible. This part's covered in carpet. In some areas, we have sound absorption on the screen wall, but not all the way, not to the ceiling. Otherwise, we'll overdampen the whole room. Almost all the acoustic panels have been pre-installed according to the design. We're still waiting for a few things from production, but there's already a slight effect of having overdampened the room a bit. That's fine. The extra panels we'll take down. Once the guys clear the area here, I'll take off all this plastic. And once we start up at least one amplifier, we'll do acoustic calculations and adjust the placement of the acoustic panels on the walls and ceiling. Basically, we'll just be removing the absorbing panels and reshuffling the hybrid panels a bit, so that it's just the way we like it. Balanced, cool, and acoustically pleasing. So basically, everything's in place. All the acoustics are on the ceiling. Everything's right here. Everything's ready. The ceiling is fully prepared for the fabric stretching. Everything's wired up there, all the LEDs and so on. So this is how the room will be assembled. Later on, you'll see what the finished room looks like without the fabric. And the fabric is the very last stage, which we'll do in literally one day, once everything else is in place. And right here, take a look. It's all in velvet too. Everything is very beautiful, smooth, and light absorbing. Everything here is sealed off so that the inner part behind the fabric, when we turn on the backlight behind the fabric, it doesn't leak into the room, Dennis, little backlight, and vice versa. So the decorative lighting doesn't illuminate all the internals hidden behind the fabric. Anyway, so many details, so much has been done. Heroic work by Blackroom Interiors. The whole ceiling is also in velvet, all the niches. Everything is very neatly integrated. The lights are in. A lot of custom work has been done to make it all come together into a single space. Well, now I'll hand it over to future me when the room is in an even more finished state. And here, friends, is some editing magic. And we're transported to literally 2 days before the technical opening of our new showroom. You can already see how beautiful the finished entrance door looks. The handle, though, isn't the final one yet. Let's go into the technical room. In here, we also have almost everything. In its place, the beauty and the acoustic door that works, opens, and lights up. And this wall decor right here. We're already tidying up the wires. The rack is fully operational, the power supply is completely connected. Our favorite transformer's here, which is now black. Everything as it should be, the automation panel, which this time we'll be showing off because it'll have beautiful lighting. It's made really cool and beautiful. This isn't its final look yet, but overall, there'll be something to show. So the equipment is okay, but the coolest thing is up here on the ceiling, on the reinforced shelf. Last time it was still lying on the floor. The shelf is hanging. You could easily put, 500 kilograms on it or even live there. The projector's in place, the Christie M4K 25 RGB pure laser. It's already set up and projecting. Anyway, overall, we're very close to being ready for the opening. The picture, of course. Now, I don't know what to do with our simpler projects that use JVCs or Sonys. This is, of course, a completely different world. After Barco and Christie, it's quite hard to look at other equipment, less professional, let's say. Let's go into the hall. So I already told you about the door. Here's a beautiful portal. We've already got an iPad on the charger here. So everything's set, the air conditioning. One air conditioner's running. It handles the internal system for everything where the equipment is, like the rack and the projector. The second AC unit is for the theater itself. Everything's already up and running smoothly. And now for the room itself. We're at the most exciting part right now, a very critical stage where the walls and ceiling are being covered in fabric. So we've spent the last few days here getting the room ready so that we could finally start stretching the fabric. So that when we turn on the backlighting behind the fabric, it looks decent and nice, and it's something we can show off naturally. Instead of, unpainted wooden beams or screws sticking out everywhere, all that kind of stuff. Basically, perfectionism in everything, including making sure the aesthetics are right, both on the outside and the inside. By the way, with our foreign colleagues, they often take a panel off the wall, and you see bare OSB and raw beams, and it just looks so cheap right away. Yeah, we don't accept that here. Accordingly, the subwoofers have already been permanently installed in the back, even though it looks like it might be a bit unstable, right? But when it's actually running, it doesn't move at all. And why is that? because there's a 95 kilogram metal plate holding it down, using vibration isolation and a plywood shelf. Everything is also covered in black to keep it aesthetic and nice, so when we turn on the backlighting, nothing stands out or looks off. The room is all black, but the fabric on the walls is a light gray. Gray fabric, exactly as it was in the original design project. The only thing is, we spent a lot of time here fine-tuning the passive acoustic environment in this room. We played a game of musical chairs with the acoustic panels, removing a lot of absorption to get the reverb time just right, so that the stereo sounds great while also making sure there aren't any unwanted effects. Basically, we wanted this room to feel as much like our previous one as possible, even though they're totally different spaces, but I think we nailed it. We spent a lot of time, resources, and did various tests to get the panels exactly where they are now. You can see all the lighting in the room right now, including the backlighting behind the fabric, which is already on. The guys are stretching it and checking the results as they go. Any little flaws? We're fixing them right on the spot. The speaker systems in the back will be lit up, as well as the temporary diffusion panels that are currently in place. For now, we have 4 subwoofers until we upgrade this room. 916 with 4 subwoofers to start with. And you won't believe it, but even with the old preset from the previous showroom, this room sounds amazing. I've already watched a couple of TV episodes and a movie here. It's really impactful. Even though the system is basically not tuned at all yet, just running on the old preset. So these sections will also be lit up, so when you walk in, it looks great. Just fabric and decorative lighting, niches and spots. But when we want to show how the room is actually built, we just press one button, literally. By the way, we already have all of this working. I'll give you a quick demo right now. There's a Lutron system here, just like the one in the previous showroom. So I've turned off the backlight behind the fabric, and only the fabric itself will be visible. And whatever we want to be decoratively lit, and accordingly, the overhead spotlights. And with a single press of a button, everything behind the fabric will light up, and you'll be able to see all the inner workings, just as we intended from the very start. Last time, the screen wasn't in place yet either. Now that we've installed it, this 170-inch widescreen from Screen Excellence, it feels like we could have gone even bigger, you know? Especially since you're looking through a wide-angle lens right now, but overall, it's quite large. When I take my glasses off, since they actually make the screen look smaller, unfortunately, I really like it overall. Though I'm used to big screens, I'd probably add another 10 inches, and from the front row, it would be about 64 or 65 degrees. And that would feel even more like an IMAX, but I think this will be plenty for you. When you come to visit, you can tell me yourself what you think of the screen size. But the picture that Christy delivers on a screen of this size, oh my goodness, at 50% laser power, because the projector is incredibly bright. Sometimes you just want to shield your eyes. The room is turning out gorgeous. The guys are doing great. It's been half a day, and almost half the room is already covered in fabric. And by this evening, everything will be ready. And tomorrow, I'll start the calibration. So, friends, I'm sending you greetings from the past. And the next episode will show how the room looks in its final state. Thanks, everyone. And, well, see you soon. So what's the final result we've got here, friends? Everyone is always very interested in the dimensions of the room. I'll put it this way. The room has a very complex geometry because, well, straight walls. Behind the fabric, with the way the finish is done now, there basically aren't any. It depends on where you measure, but if you measure at the narrowest point, somewhere in the corners, and project those dimensions onto the floor, and take the distance from the screen to the rear fabric, then we're left with about 33 square meters of floor space. If we take the wider parts, like near the screen where the fabric finish is closest to the walls, and measure the width and multiply it by the length again, it turns out we have about 37 or 38 square meters left. Because this whole cocoon tapers toward the back of the room. And it was very interesting, by the way, when we put up the fabric and quite by accident turned on a projector light from over there by the screen, aiming the beam along this finish, we got this really interesting pattern. We immediately decided to install special lights that we can turn on with a single button. to show how it looks when the fabric is stretched across the walls at various angles and in different directions. Or even speaker grills made from this fabric when they're placed right next to each other. The light reflects in a completely different way when the fabric is stretched at a different angle. It's a very interesting effect. But getting back to the room's square footage, so overall, on average, we ended up with about 35 square meters where we can easily move around and walk. And as for the ceiling height, measuring from the lowest point where I am now up to the fabric, it's 3 meters 15 centimeters. That's roughly the amount of visual space we have left in the room. Just a reminder, the original space was 47 square meters. That's the room we started with. Those were our outer wall dimensions, from which we stepped back and installed new interior walls. First, we poured a floating floor, then we put up the internal soundproofing walls. After that, we installed the suspended ceiling. And within that whole internal soundproofing setup, well, you saw how the screen wall structures were built using special beams. The podium, the stage in front of the screen, and the back wall, which houses the acoustics and subwoofers as well. And at this point, I'd like to once again thank our partners, Technosonus, for their contribution. For the incredible soundproofing we achieved here, using all the necessary materials, including the floating floor, and for refining their standard layering, we boosted the soundproofing power, creating self-supporting walls with an air gap from the outer walls. And I'll remind you again that we're doing all of this inside a regular shopping mall. Yes, it does showcase various premium products. Casa Rico Expo isn't your typical mall where you'd find clothing stores, but nevertheless, all the rules and requirements for public spaces and shopping centers still apply here. So there were many restrictions and unique challenges. During the process of creating this cinema hall, I've talked about them in previous episodes as well. And today, there will be certain points that I'll definitely share with you too. Since this is a showroom, its construction and creation weren't exactly our top priority, because our actual clients, to whom we have obligations, always come first. That's why the construction took such a long time. More than 1.5 years from the project's conception to the final result. Still, I think we handled such a complex project quite quickly, especially since we wanted to make everything one level better. Cooler, more powerful, wider, longer, and higher. More acoustically inert, more thoughtfully designed, and built for the future, future-proof, so that this system could be upgraded. And overall, so that the level of cinematic immersion and spatial perception would rise by several orders of magnitude, compared to what we had in the previous Blackroom company showroom, version 1.0. I believe we definitely succeeded, especially since this is just the first completed iteration of this showroom. Today I'll talk about what else we want to do in the future. But for now, in this form, the showroom's already live and will remain so for a while. And only later will we, well, at some point, add the extra features that were originally planned. But for now, enough was enough. We just wanted to open as soon as possible. And we launched the showroom, timing it with the Hi-Fi High-End show that took place in October of 2025, where I was a speaker. And following a good old tradition, we actually welcomed our first guests on the opening day of the Hi-Fi High-End show, just as we did back in 2021 when the previous Blackroom showroom launched. But getting back to the design, I want to say that a partially, on-the-fly approach was used here. Meaning the design immediately turned into working documentation that was sent to the site and given to the site, builders, installers, and cable layers, so the process wouldn't stall. And we didn't work out the complete solution from start to finish right away, as we usually do for direct client commercial cinemas that we build, simply because it was impossible to just sit down and foresee everything here in advance. To do it quickly and immediately understand exactly how we wanted it to turn out, because, as they say, the appetite came with the eating. At first, well, obviously there was a technical brief where we wanted to include as many different features as possible. This and that, and one projector to be installed, then another, and even both together, for example. That was one of the variables that We're in the brief, but when we looked at the actual constraints we had here, what we actually ran into, we ended up redesigning probably half the project, even though the original concept, how I envision the space, how it feels, how it's perceived visually, it's no secret, I've shared before, that I was inspired by the minimalist interiors of Dolby Cinema, and here we've created a kind of mini Dolby Cinema. On one hand, it's scaled down because the room is much smaller, but on the other hand, it's maxed out because it's probably a much more immersive experience. An immersive experience. Because, after all, in this one room, many more details were thought out and implemented. And the attention to these details was simply at its maximum, both on my part and on the team's part, because the team is essentially an extension of me, of my values. Everyone shares the company's values and understands what's important, where a compromise is possible, and where it's, well, absolutely unacceptable. And there were so many of these various tweaks and refinements to the project. And then during implementation, a huge number of nuances also arose, and we brought all of them, every single one, to the ideal version. Well, I just can't recall such a number of details right now, purely just at the very final stage before covering this space. With Fabric, it was implemented on the fly, because such nuances are impossible to account for in the project, especially when you're making a completely new cinema hall with a new finishing construction. And here we've implemented a huge number of new solutions that we haven't done in any commercial cinema yet. We primarily practice on ourselves, and all of this, of course, also affected the timeline. But nevertheless, we now have a finished project in our hands, and if we format it with all the necessary title pages, as we do, traditionally, it will turn out to be about that. Maybe even a bit thicker than 150 pages. Right now, just the drawings and visualizations alone are 92 pages. A number of things might even be omitted there. Maybe there's no lighting design, as far as I remember. Yeah, so, well, the project is truly, absolutely complete. And we're going to refine it now, bring it to this same level and result, because with this hall, I think next year we'll definitely apply for the Best Showroom category at the CEDA Awards, because such spaces deserve to have the world know about them, just as we did with our first showroom. I'm very pleased with how our guys from Blackroom Interiors actually pulled off this fabric stretched finish. It's really the first hall where all the fabric surfaces are stretched along the profile. There isn't a single grill here that you could just walk up to and snap off like we usually did before. And this is some kind of new experience, just a new experience, and at the same time, a new space for such seamless beauty, seamless fabric stretching. I really like how it turned out, actually. There are certain little nuances here, their own subtleties. And when you've forgotten something there, accordingly, only a master can come, carefully remove this fabric, finish it there, redo it, and carefully tuck it back in. And if it suddenly doesn't work out, then the fabric has to be replaced. Yes, this technology has its own nuances. But nevertheless, you can create very interesting three-dimensional surfaces, just as we've managed to do. When this kind of cocoon in the back of the room starts to overhang and, well, sort of gradually becomes diagonally horizontal in a descending way. Very interesting geometry if you look from the screen and shine a light on the walls. The coolest thing about this setup is that we didn't just cover it up and hide everything that's behind there. It's a showroom after all. And the original idea was that we could still see what we've hidden behind the fabric. And now it's all done with just a single click of a button. Just like that, everything behind me lights up. Behind the fabric finish, on the walls, and on the ceiling. And we can see exactly how many acoustic panels. You'll see a caption here showing the total number that ended up on the walls and ceiling, placed to make it as acoustically comfortable as it turned out to be. You're hearing my voice now like it's in a pro studio, but I'm just using a basic lapel mic. And as always, we fine-tuned this whole process right here on site. We took measurements, checked reverb times, looked at waterfalls, and, of course, walked around clapping. We listened to music in stereo and multi-channel, and we even put on some movies. We used all our senses and measuring tools to fine-tune the acoustic atmosphere of this room. We were playing a puzzle game here. My guys from Blackroom Interiors probably hated me for it, but we went through about 3 iterations, changing the layout, the number, and the placement of these acoustic panels on the walls and ceiling. On paper, it seems like it'll be fine this way, but then I show up and say, I want to move this, I want to move that. This is clearly extra. We overdamped it here, and so we start. We were taking down absorption panels. In the end, I think only 2 small ones are left. Right here next to the speakers, the wides, there are 2 small, purely absorbent panels. Everything else is either a hybrid panel that absorbs and diffuses, or a pure diffuser. Because of the carpeting, the soft furniture, and the screen wall is also partially covered with sound-absorbing material. But we all know it's important that you actually want to be in the room. When you walk in, it's the first thing all our guests notice. Wow, it's like stepping into a whole different world. How's it so great and comfortable in here? As soon as you enter, the acoustics are different. I mean, people use all sorts of words, but they're basically describing what actually happened. You've been transported into a completely different atmosphere, and it feels amazing. You don't want to leave. It's all thanks to these panels, because they work on the mid and high frequencies. And the soundproofing, as usual, works well on the low frequencies, absorbing the excess bass. And here, the carpeting actually played a bit of a trick on us. We wanted to make it cozier, more home-like, and, give it a more premium feel. Just to make it feel cozy, you walk in and everything matches the level of the place you've come to. And the carpeting, it's a good carpet, and it should, by design, complement this effect. But it has its own acoustic properties. It also absorbs sound, but actually in a fairly narrow frequency range, mostly the highest frequencies. So it can, so to speak, shave off the high frequencies. That's not always necessary. And if, for example, the flooring were hard, we could have placed many more absorbing panels on the walls and ceiling. Accordingly, when the entire floor in a room is carpeted, the acoustic calculation for the walls must be adjusted towards reducing sound absorption. And at the same time, in critical areas, you still need to keep sound absorbing panels, or at least hybrid panels like these ones right here, so that you have a minimum of the most critical harmful reflections in the room. There are such spots. And I've also talked about this a long time ago on the channel. There's a separate video about the basic principle of placing acoustic panels. You can check it out later. There was another difficulty here. Building the first showroom that has a podium. Well, the first showroom of its kind in Moscow, because such a showroom has already been built in Uzbekistan. It has a slightly different configuration, a different height, and overall, well, the finish is different there. The walls are all straight. There's an opportunity to place acoustic panels, including at the bottom. Here, our finishing line goes upwards. Consequently, I simply couldn't physically place an acoustic panel lower than this line. But I would have liked to do that, for example, over there for the second row to place them lower. Here too, for the first row, I'd continue placing them lower. But there are these nuances. This was a new task for me. To make it so that despite the panels starting to go up, the overall acoustics of the room still remained cool and pleasant, so there wouldn't be any parasitic reflections, the so-called flutter echo. And in the end, that's how it turned out. But it was also another challenge. I think I've been talking about the new level of auxiliary structure installation we used in the showroom throughout almost all the episodes, and even here too. What kind of change would it seem to be? Well, we wanted to do something new, even more heavy-duty and acoustically inert, right? Meaning the podium structure, the stage structure, the screen wall, and the back wall where all our acoustics are. And here to help, another partner came in, the company Deny Barrier, which developed specifically for us, and released a new thick membrane, 5 millimeters thick, which we used to sheath this podium. There were other materials used in the layering between, with I-beams, girders, and all sorts of structures between the wall and the platform, so the platform is completely decoupled, and from the floating floor, remember, and, accordingly, from all the side surfaces. So it's kind of on its own, but at the same time, it's very heavy, solid, and also acoustically inert. And it's very pleasant to walk on, it's nice to jump on, to be on. And in the second row, of course, it's really cool and awesome to watch movies. It's not distracting, it doesn't rattle, it doesn't produce any unwanted sounds at all. And at the same time, it's made of inert materials. The same applies to the stage. The same goes for the wall behind the screen and the back wall. These are all acoustically super inert, decoupled structures, just as we want, so that nothing introduces any additional overtones or resonances in an unwanted way. Your body, when you just want to hear the bass, feel the bass with your body, but not feel the bass through the platform. Once again, I want to admire this final finish, this new principle and frame that we came up with using this technology. It's exactly an element of the so-called fast cinema halls. This is another product of ours where we come into a finished room and very quickly create a cinema for you. Without construction, without soundproofing, yes, there are certain nuances and compromises, but you can wrap a room in fabric like this, again, place in all the necessary equipment, behind it, both the speakers and the right acoustic panels, and quite quickly just do this finish. Visually, you'll have a very neat room, but at the same time, correct from an acoustic point of view. We tested this technology here. It would seem the wall is just hanging in the air, but no. It hangs so that, well, it's totally solid. The guys had doubts that it would start to compress somewhere on the ceiling, that the fabric would start to push these guides against each other, that it would sag. No, there's no hint of that at all. A spatial three-dimensional frame designed in 3D, cut on a CNC and simply assembled on site. According to the manual, roughly speaking, put this here, that there, and so on. Of course, there are nuances with leveling, and there might be issues with surfaces that aren't perfectly flat, but everything is caught. Laser levels, transits, everything is set up, and this frame is assembled. And you can see that, well, everything ended up where it should, and the fabric basically just had to be pulled into the guide profiles. It's a very cool technology, but here we also encountered a bunch of unforeseen nuances. Because at the design stage, for example, it wasn't very obvious to the designers that this light, when we turn on the backlighting behind the fabric, could shine through and go where we don't want it. For example, here, where we have a purely decorative line of blue backlighting. Or into some ceiling niches that it would leak out. And all these nuances, all these plugs, that is, a number of these things. We were coming up with and implementing things on the fly right here. We see a problem, we come up with a solution. The production task was sent out immediately. We cut the panels that will fit in and cover up this gap. They were delivered, installed, and covered with special velvet as well, so that when we turn on the lights now, it all looks decent. And there was a lot of stuff here, like, damn, both this and that are visible if you shine a light on them. So I was personally climbing a ladder here on the next to last day before the fabric was stretched, spray painting a huge number of those little details that would shine if we just shone this light on them right now. This technology, this hall, considering that we were doing it for the first time, in this particular way, it is, of course, full of these nuances. But now they've all gone into our knowledge bank, into our knowledge base. All these nuances are now, of course, understood and known by the design department, and already at the design stage, all these structural elements will also be reflected in the project. But experience is a priceless thing that can only be gained by going through one trial or another, which is exactly what we successfully did here. And just like in this example with our demo cinema hall, in our customers' real projects, our clients' projects, we refine every joint, every little detail, everything you see, and even everything you don't actually see. Because, well, it would seem, why bother sprucing things up back there? Well, we'll turn it on and yeah, you can see the guts and all that. Look at the Americans. You take a fabric panel off the wall and they've got bare OSB, unpainted timber basically. A total mess. The British often have the same thing. I just don't get it. I don't accept that. It's one of my values that aesthetics, there should be beauty everywhere. If you're doing something, do it with love, for heaven's sake. And it's exactly the same approach, of course, that we bring to all our projects, to all our real commercial projects for our customers. If this resonates with you, then we can build a cinema hall for you based on these kinds of values and meticulousness. You could even say perfectionism. You'll find all the necessary links to our website, the Blackroom company, in the description. Leave a request. Just come down here, see and touch everything for yourself. Listen to it, of course, look at the picture, talk to me, to our managers, and see if what we do and how we do it resonates with you. Then we can work together. And since I mentioned the fabric stretching, I want to take a moment to thank our partner, the textile company, for this beautiful fabric called Aina. It's a new color, if I'm not mistaken. A really good, beautiful, very gray color. It's pretty much exactly what we had in the visualization. The only nuance being that we probably forgot in the rush and didn't do it like in the visualizations. We haven't covered the front segment of the wall finishing in black yet, even though our screen wall is covered in black. And this section here should also be covered in black. I think in the next iteration, when we install the second door and do some other refinements, we'll definitely try to cover it in black after all. And we have this fabric, both gray and black. It's a great stretchy fabric, acoustically transparent, just wonderful. I tested it primarily for sound transparency to make sure everything would be fine. And it really didn't let us down. So friends, high quality acoustic fabric is also available from us, of course. We use it in almost all our projects. Now let's move on to the rear subwoofers. I'll tell you about the nuances we encountered with the new system for mounting and securing our subwoofers and speaker systems. Subwoofers are the kind of thing that move a lot of air in a space when they're working, but there's a flip side to that coin. When the driver works, it pushes in the opposite direction, trying to move the subwoofer cabinet itself. And in our case, the subwoofers have a fairly large surface area and are quite shallow in depth. Their stability is actually somewhat questionable, so they have to be secured in place one way or another where they're located. And on the other hand, they aren't heavy enough to just stand firmly on their own. It weighs about 80 kilograms in total, but given its dimensions, roughly 1 meter by 120, if I'm not mistaken, it can quite easily, if you put it on a smooth floor, start dancing around and just slide off to visit grandma. Knowing all these nuances, we came up with a new mounting system for the subwoofers, which basically adds weight to the sub so it doesn't want to jump around. And we also couple it to the floor using special rubber pads and a mat. Not to mention that, of course, this entire load-bearing structure is acoustically decoupled from the soundproofing, the floor, and the ceiling. It's acoustically inert itself, doesn't produce any rattles, and the sub sits on a rubber mat again. I'm oversimplifying here. It's pressed down from above by more rubber, but it's not actually rubber, but a vibration and sound insulation material. Din barrier is also used here. Then a heavy plywood shelf sits on top of that. A large one made of 15 or even 20 millimeter plywood. And then we load it with a weight from above. A metal plate. You can see on the screen how much this plate weighs. It weighs a ton, because it took 2 people struggling to bring it in, and then 4 of us to hoist it onto each subwoofer. The front ones are secured the same way, as is that rear right one over there. And 4 more subwoofers will be secured the same way when we install them during the upgrade. When you do something for the first time, you'll usually run into new challenges and problems. And here, as it turned out in the end, that was exactly the case. And I wasn't the one who found the cause of the problem. I have to give credit to my team here. The guys, while I was away in London recently, at the CED Awards ceremony, they basically took this whole thing apart and fine-tuned it. And among other things, they found the problem, they found the root cause of the issue. The problem was that at certain frequencies, when the subwoofers are active, right here in this area, and also behind the screen, diagonally from the right sub, there was this annoying, faint knocking sound. A kind of tapping or rattling noise. And you're walking around trying to pinpoint it. I started blaming our favorite I-beams, thinking they were defective or hadn't been glued properly. We'd already covered them all with Vibroplast beforehand. I was wondering what to do next. It turned out that the weight, the metal weight, when it was sitting on the plywood, even with a layer in between, I think this plywood of ours is covered in velvet. Anyway, you'd think this massive plate would hold the plywood firmly in place. And then the subwoofer is connected via vibration isolation. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it turned out that something somewhere wasn't perfectly flat. Either the plywood was slightly warped, or the metal plate itself wasn't perfectly level. Who knows? And basically, in some spots, they started to wobble, creating those elusive, unwanted noises. So the beam structure's fine, and so are the vibration dampening materials used for mounting. Everything's great. It's just that this new design we came up with and built has its own potential pitfalls and hidden snags. And so what you see here now is a test setup. We added an extra layer using a noise block panel, which is another specialized soundproofing material. The guys basically used whatever was at hand to put between the metal plate and the plywood. More insulation material to smooth out any potential unevenness that might have been there. And the noise vanished. Now the room is completely silent and noise-free. You can crank up the bass as much as you want, and you won't hear a single unwanted rattle. And by the way, I should mention how quickly this finishing goes up once all the components are ready. I mean, once the frame is in place and everything behind it is installed, speakers, acoustic panels, and you've checked it all, then covering a room like this with fabric with 3 people. The guys did it. Basically, 2 were stretching the fabric while 1 assisted. It can easily be done in a single day. It took us a day and a half because we kept stopping the guys. Appetite comes with eating, as they say. And on that very day, the first day of fabric stretching, I decided to check all the speaker systems to ensure their installation was perfect, so to speak, so that when they play across the entire frequency range, their mounting is also acoustically inert and there are no resonances. And as you might guess, we found those resonances and fixed them. This slowed the guys down a bit with stretching the fabric on the walls and ceiling. But if we hadn't slowed down, it would have definitely been worse, though they would have finished in 1 day, of course. So that's another big plus of this technology, that you can finish the room with the final coating much faster. And in a typical home theater, a client's, most often there's some design alternating with wooden panels, something in a modern style, but even all those fabric sections that will ultimately remain for stretching can also be done, well, probably even faster than here. Because here, there are very large areas for stretching the fabric. So this technology is very, very time efficient. It can be done really quickly. Once you set up the frame and made sure it's ready, I want to spend a long time in this showroom and in this room. And do you know why? There's plenty of fresh air here, and it's silent. Can't hear it. You can really sit here for hours. When I was tuning the room, I spent 2 days here straight, and I didn't want to go anywhere, basically. I just went about my business. Just went to grab a bite and came back here with great pleasure. Quiet, comfortable. And this atmosphere of fresh air, cooled air, exactly how you need it, how you want it, it's great. The ventilation system, of course, uses silencers. I've already shown several times during construction how it runs in the hallway, where the silencers are, the split system, the units, how we're connected to the mall's main supply and exhaust ventilation, also through our own silencers. Overall, it all works brilliantly. Over there is our supply, where the cooled air is mixed in, and in front of the screen, the linear diffuser is the exhaust. The cold air descends. Right here, behind the second row, flows through the whole room, and then rises over there, already processed with carbon dioxide, warm, and so on. This is a nearly perfect setup. We'd have liked to put it in the podium, of course, but that would have further complicated and prolonged the project. So we went with a classic system, where all the ventilation is built into the ceiling. This rear niche is non-standard. Not like the front niche, not like, well, the 2 middle niches. The front niche has a slightly different design. And here we also applied certain new solutions on site, some nuances like lowering the lights on special extensions, and, well, its overall geometry and the amount of lighting that ended up there, it's, well, done differently, basically. Many decisions were made on the spot, and in the end, I'm very happy with how the ventilation is integrated. It's invisible, completely invisible, of this linear diffuser, which is located right there in the wall in a niche. Imagine to actually see it, you have to look closely. And with such a seemingly simple finish, decorative lighting takes center stage. And here, I understood from the start that its role and its implementation would be very important for the final perception of the space. That's why we really dedicated a lot of time to the lighting here to achieve the result we got. I'm actually quite happy, again, with the result. Thanks to my partner Vlad, who gave me advice on the lighting. And here's one of the hacks we used here. I'll share it. It's using 2 separate strips side by side in one profile, so the final backlight's brighter. So that the efficiency of the glow from just one strip, for example, that runs somewhere over there or along the walls or, well, in the steps we have a standard. I think it's an RGBV strip. There's enough brightness there. But in the niches right here on the stage, these side walls, consequently, this whole decorative setup, there are 2 strips here, one pure white and one just RGB, because the number and density of LEDs in that case is significantly higher. Yeah, as the power increases, more power supplies and all that. But when you want to turn it on bright without any spots on the ceiling, then this backlight is enough to light up the room perfectly, so all the necessary lines are visible, just as you planned, so they're clear and emphasized. And why do you think it was also important to do this specifically in a black room? Because any light from a black surface is practically not reflected. Consequently, it's even more important how intensely it hits that surface. And here we have absolutely no direct LED light, meaning it's all reflected. It reflects, or tries to reflect, off the velvet and black carpeted surfaces. So, well, it was very important to make sure it shines brightly. We have quite a few lighting groups here, separate lines. So basically, every single line, if we wanted to, we could have made it so each segment turned on. Well, roughly speaking, one by one. But that would have been total overkill and excessive, and we'd have needed another light panel. We optimized it after all, and all this backlighting behind the fabric, showing all the internals, is one group. Although, in fact, there are quite a few lighting lines running here. In general, I don't know how many kilometers of wire we laid here, probably at least 2. There's one light there, that's enough. It's informational lighting, so we didn't bother with RGB there. But everything that's visible, everything that emphasizes the finish line, especially along the walls, the steps, the stage, the podium in the back, and the steps are all lit too. It's all RGBW, and the W is a separate bright white strip. We ended up with 6 RGB lighting groups that we can and do control separately on the ceiling. Here we have 3 groups, 2 niches, and 2 more paired niches. This is the stage down here. It turns on and off separately, it's dimmable, and the light color changes. This is the wall trim line. This right here is the decorative descending RGBW lighting, RGBW. And this, of course, is the podium. The podium, its steps, its backline, you see it immediately when you enter the room. So these are the 6 groups, actually, of RGBW decorative lighting that we have right here. Then 2 more groups of spots, which are also controlled via dolly. The main 12 spots are located in these decorative niches. And a few more, 4 spots on the track, located along the screen. It's usually not turned on, but if we want to, say, organize some kind of performance there, some kind of presentation, then this group is turned on, and the person, properly lit, actually gives a report while standing on the stage. That scenario is also provided for. Well, and considering the number of these groups, that is, it turns out we have 8 groups, plus a special backlight that actually illuminates all the internals. That makes 9 lighting groups just in this room. And, of course, smooth power on scenarios. I've already set it up here, and it's, of course, a special kind of magic when you walk into the hall, press one button, and they light up softly one by one. First the stage, then the steps, then the decorative trim line, then the ceiling niches, one after another. They gradually light up there, flash, and then finally the spots turn on softly. This, of course, this is a blast. It creates an atmosphere, and likewise a smooth shutdown, one after another, smooth dimming, turning off, and a calm transition to watching whatever you'll be watching on the fantastic screen. Lighting is an important detail. Moreover, this time, when we go out into the corridor, I'll show you how we also lit up the equipment. And, of course, I wonder why we didn't do it that way last time. And of course, the story about the video system of our new showroom deserves special attention because it's a whole new world, a new level and a new depth of immersion right into the image, right into the realism of that image. All thanks to the Christie projector, Christie Digital. The model's called M4K25. And do you know what 25 is? It's essentially 25,000 lumens. ANSI lumens. According to the specs, I think, it's 24,500, but that's not the point. This is the maximum brightness that this device is capable of delivering. It's a 3D LPRGB laser. A projector that delivers almost 98% of the Rec 2020 space. That is, it's capable of showing practically how our human eye sees, with huge brightness and with very good contrast, I must admit. And now imagine 24,000 lumens on a screen size of 170 inches. In this showroom, the screen is now larger than in the old one. The old one was 160 wide, here it's now 170. And, to put it briefly, after this image, after the image on the Apex Cinema project with the Barco, this projector is actually 3 times brighter. Even more. And it's running here right now, just as a quick look. I haven't calibrated it yet. Out of the box, it actually shows an amazingly realistic and lifelike picture. I just haven't actually physically gotten around to the video system yet. The way it looks at 50% laser power is just mind-blowing. It's just a deeply immersive, three-dimensional, realistic, lifelike image. It's very similar to the best examples of how we see movies in a public cinema. Take IMAX laser, for instance. You'll see an image of roughly that level there. Take Dolby Cinema, and you'll see an image of that same level. Except here, I can crank the brightness up much higher. What I can tell you is that brightness is a very important thing. When there's enough of it, when there's plenty of it, it overcomes many other parameters of the projected image. Even that super deep black level we're so used to on JVC projectors, and a bit less so on Sony. That brightness combined with this, truly cinematic, I can't put it any other way, cinematic, real, immersive, three-dimensional image without the need for 3D glasses. Only 3D LP projectors are capable of such an image. And honestly, I don't even want to suggest installing a JVC to anyone anymore after you've lived with a device of this caliber. Of course, the budget is completely different, but for those who can afford it, friends, just come visit and see for yourself what it's like. And notice, our projection window is specially elongated upwards, because originally, according to the specs, the goal here was to be able to compare projectors. It's a showroom, and here we have to show the difference as well, if possible, yeah. Initially, we wanted to make a large projection box, build it in here, so the projectors would be as close as possible. So, anyway, it was a whole saga, an engineering feat, where we wanted to make one box that would fit 2 projectors side by side. But we ran into so many difficulties, complications, cost increases, potential delays, and potential pitfalls that were right on the surface that the decision was made to go with the old proven method after all and just put the projectors on a shelf that would hang next to the soundproofing wall and install a projection window, a portal, and implement the system in the form it's in right now. My respect once again to the guys from Blackroom Interior. They made this fantastic portal. Everything is lined with velvet. It all just looks phenomenally cool. On that side, the projector sits on a glass shelf on a metal frame. It can hold 400 kilograms. Actually, you could put 2 projectors there if needed, say 200 each, but that never happens. We're unlikely to find such a projector, but overall the safety margin is huge. And because the window's vertical and so high, we can put it right on top of this Christie now, a JVC projector like an NZ900, and do a comparison to show the difference. As soon as we have some spare change, we'll definitely do that. Right now, it stands alone in its glory, just shining its image onto this beautiful screen. And for it, we made a special hood, also out of velvet, which protects it from that side. Our projected image from any outside lighting or light that might come through the window from there shine into the cinema hall so that nothing extra hits our screen. There are a huge number of details. A lot has been thought through. Once again, this is the first time such a scheme has been implemented. I really like it. The glass, as usual, is museum-grade anti-reflective. But this time, it's a completely new design, and we installed 2 panes of glass at an angle. and we positioned them in a completely different way. And for sound insulation, this is a much more correct and proper solution, and of course for such a bright projector. But at the same time, a rather noisy projector because it still shines at 24,000 lumens. This is inevitable and really the only correct solution. The exit sign, which is located above our acoustic door, is a mandatory requirement of the shopping center. There are certain nuances we must follow, just like the fire sprinklers. The fire system, the emergency fire suppression system, is here and fully implemented. And if, God forbid, something suddenly happens, the fire will be extinguished. We minimized it as much as we could, taped it up, painted it, all those pipes, all the sprinklers. The only thing is, we didn't touch the tips, the sprinklers themselves, and as it turned out, they don't even interfere, even being located near the screen. The only nuance I couldn't overcome here was the less than ideal placement of these fire suppression system pipes, because no matter how many specs you give, the pipes were welded incorrectly. And in the end, my ceiling speakers had to be placed narrower than I would have liked in an ideal setup. But I decided to place them a bit narrower rather than much wider. Right now, well, I'm still conducting the first test listenings. I haven't even watched a real full-length movie here yet. I hope to do that soon to fully evaluate how correct my decision was in this case. But I had to choose the lesser of two evils, and I did it. Recalling the image from the Christie projector, once again, I'm just thrilled by the effect it actually gives. And here I can't help but thank our partners from Christie for the fact that this projector is here with us now. And you have this wonderful opportunity to see it live. This is truly a whole new level in projection imaging, friends. State-of-the-art technology that really provides a massive boost in the quality of immersion into what's happening on the screen. How do you like the size, friends? I really like it. Although, to be honest, when I sit in the front row, it's a bit overwhelming. It seems bigger, even though according to all the specs and measurements, it's about the same as what we had in the previous showroom. 62, 64 degrees of horizontal viewing angle from the front row. And it's fantastic when you have a picture like this from the Christie projector here, but there are some nuances. Again, yes, I was talking about new ways of mounting speaker systems and subwoofers. And here on the fronts, we've again applied a new way of mounting the front speakers. Considering that the system is designed for the flagship Alcon's audio line, all the niches are made for it. But since the entry-level line is still a bit smaller, we had to add some special, these sound insulating sandwich panels on one side of each speaker, so that the speaker would fit in there with a bit of a snug fit and stay in place. Well, that was a minor detail. It wasn't hard to overcome and figure out how to actually do it, but at any moment we can bring in the flagship speakers. Take out the old ones, which we can offer you at a great price, by the way, and install the flagship Alcons, just like we have in the Apex Cinema project. This cinema room was designed specifically for that system. But you know what other interesting thing I ran into here? It was specifically thanks to the super bright Christie projector that I saw how a standard acoustically transparent screen, when you don't use a black backing, which I often skipped because I didn't want to add extra layers of fabric that would degrade the sound and reduce, well, basically the output level or sensitivity of the front speakers at high frequencies. Any additional layer of fabric, like a black backing, it causes an extra drop of about 1.5 to 2, depending on its density. 1.5 to 2 decibels. That's power you're just losing. It kind of shaves it off, meaning the frequency response curve becomes flatter. And here, when I turned it on properly and started watching some movie clips, I saw that my acoustically transparent screen, the white and lighter, Neo from Screen Excellence, is translucent. It's so translucent that I can see these vertical supports covered in velvet. I went behind the screen and saw, oh my God, everything is bright back there. Even though everything is black, it gets lit up really well through the screen material. Consequently, not putting a black backing on this screen with such a bright projector image is simply impossible, and you just have to do it. But then again, I didn't want to lose any sound quality. So what did my engineering brain come up with? That's right. We went ahead and cut small holes exactly where the high frequency sections of our Alcon's audio front channels are. We cut them into the black backend, which we then mounted directly onto the screen in the traditional way. First we mounted it, then we measured everything and cut it out. Now you can see in the image how that process went. A free life hack for you, take it. Nothing's too good for my dear subscribers. Immediately the contrast improved right away, and that translucent screen effect disappeared. Of course, the supports were no longer visible, and naturally, the image quality and brightness went up another level. And it's these nuances, encountering such effects and fixing them, that often make up the work, especially when you're doing something for the first time, using new technologies, reaching a new level, or applying new principles in finishing or mounting various elements. On one hand, it's very interesting, but on the other, you're constantly solving new level of engineering challenges. And I like that. And here we definitely leveled up our skills quite a bit. And I hope that this life hack, for example, I hope you haven't seen it anywhere else. That I came up with it, but if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. Entering the cinema room, we now have an iPad Pro on a magnetic charging station, which of course houses all the controls. As usual, we have RTI here. Everything's controlled, everything's great, everything's beautiful. And it conveniently magnets right here. We'll definitely install another magnetic station like this in the first main row, right in the armrest. Right here, we have the controls for our air conditioning system. This is a separate AC for the cinema hall and one for the hallway where all the equipment is. Climate control that automatically maintains the required temperature. And here's a small Pico remote from Lutron, which with one button press starts a smooth lighting sequence for the cinema hall. When you open the door, you just press one button and slowly, everything turns on beautifully and in sequence. And notice, friends, I've mentioned this in previous episodes, we kept our acoustic door from the first showroom. It was, of course, restored, repainted, and it's found a second life in this new space. And as for how our team implemented all this, it's exactly like the renderings, only even better. There, the projector stopped humming. Hear that? What a difference in noise. You can even pick it up through the lapel mic. And the coolest part is when you leave the cinema hall, right in front of you, there's now a beautiful rack with all the equipment. The system is basically the same one that was in the previous showroom. That's 5 Alcons amplifiers, 1 for subwoofers, 4 for speakers, network gear, a 24-channel Trinuv processor, RTI control system, XP8S controller. Couple of sources here: Apple TV, Dune, Magnetar for playing discs, and a computer in a completely different case. I have a new system unit. This is our computer with the MAD VR plugin for demonstrating content and maximum quality directly from the PC in HDR. Well, anyway, on this topic, we have a separate video on the channel. And the computer as a source delivers a truly great high-quality picture. And of course, plenty of free space for future upgrades. And I'm itching to add more things here. A video processor and a couple more amplifiers. Basically, the processor could also be swapped for a fully digital Trinuv Altitude 32. Accordingly, here, further to the left of the equipment rack, we have the electrical panel. It's both the lighting panel and the power panel. That's it. Well, it's almost in its final form. We still need to cover everything here with this glass-like hardboard cover. All of this is the LED backlight control. That's 2/3 of the panel. And if we take just the lighting system, Lutron, these are the main Lutron units and the ballast that control it. In specific groups through Dolly. In the hallway, we also have a smart home setup. Everything is on Lutron. So you see how much space a panel like this takes with this much RGBW LED lighting? It takes up quite a bit of space. And accordingly, minimalism in the circuit breakers that provide the power. And of course, at the bottom, following our good old tradition, just like in the Apex Cinema, we have a Blackroom isolation transformer providing clean power to our entire rack and essentially to our entire show lane. The lights are powered directly, but everything related to the audio-video system is isolated through the transformer. And this, of course, gives a huge boost to the realism of the sound. And of course, the heart of the video system, the Christie projector, is located right now above the operator. But it will definitely never fall on him because this shelf can support 400 kilograms. But in its place, the largest Christie or Barco projector could easily fit. In short, this shelf will hold any monster, even the most top-of-the-line projector, like the Christie Eclipse. And I hope that one day that'll actually happen. Friends, this is the hallway, filled with equipment and decor, which isn't even fully finished yet. There will also be soundproofing models here, some other additional things for demonstration to provide even more information. In short, our showroom has come to life, and I am incredibly happy about it. Well, friends, that's all for now. Write your questions in the comments if you still have any. Give this video a like. I'm sure it was informative, interesting, and just great to see the completion of such a wonderful build. And I'm Anton, the founder of Blackroom.